Hi,
Likes.
hi everyone. Thanks for coming to our talk. Before we begin, just wanted to check in the room. How many of you are involved in making any form of VR work? Okay, cool.
Cool.
And how many are hoping to create in VR? Okay, almost can see you. And how many are involved in some kind of mental health or well-being work? Great, great, cool. It's really nice to see all of you. And just very quickly, a very technical question as well. Anyone here who might not know what XR is? Oh, great. So we don't have to go through the definitions for that. Okay. So we wanted to just like show you what XR is in case you don't know. Many people see as AR, MR, and VR, but we are also including immersive rooms in our presentation today. So I am Boo. I'm originally from Singapore, now based in London. I am a XR creator and game designer. So I work across both Singapore and UK teams to create well-being experiences, whether in games or just an experience itself. And I often find myself actually a bit lost at games conferences because when I start telling people what I do get like some responses like, that's not really a game. But I would like to say that it is a game, but maybe just not games that appeal to mainstream gamers, but appeals to non-mainstream gamers. Yeah, and so because of that, I started writing a talk for Develop, and I was surprised that I got in. Actually, I wanted to talk about empathy through XR because I believe that. With XR now, it unlocks a lot of potential for well-being for non-mainstream gamers to actually engage in like maybe gamified ways of storytelling or empathy work. Yeah, so I'm also really, really excited to introduce like two friends here. When the talk got in, I decided to involve Sarah and Kirsty, who are from my favorite XR studios, Hatsumi and Anagram. You'll hear a lot more about their work later. You're in for a treat to be hearing that. And so let me see if I have missed out anything. Oh, the both of them are multi-award winning XR creators. And I have been involved myself in some of Sarah's work and play tested for Anagram for both Goliath and Impulse. I'm actually really proud of that. And so without further ado, we will start chatting through our projects, and then we will go into some of the why we create an XR and some lessons that we've learned along the way and challenges that we see down the road. Okay, Sarah.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name's Sarah, and I have a bit of a kind of weird entrance into the field of immersive. I studied anthropology because I just find people extremely interesting. And then it was just as I was graduating that my dad passed away. And I grew up here in Brighton and started volunteering at a gallery here in town called Fabrica, that's an arts organisation that's kind of housed in this former Regency church. And I think that was my introduction to immersive, that they would have these huge site-specific installations, and I would stand there in the gallery, and people would tell me what these artworks meant to them, and that was such an amazing way to talk about things that were really hard to explore. And it was actually working there that I first met Kirsty. So we worked together years ago when I was at Fabrica, and Kirsty was at Blast Theory. But my interest in VR really came from kind of navigating the NHS myself and just feeling really unheard by doctors. And I became really interested in how VR could be a tool to talk about lived experience. How can we put someone in the shoes of someone else, so to speak? And this is particularly in the whole kind of Chris Milk empathy machine era. And was just like, does that really work? Can you really know what it's like to be someone else by putting on a headset? And I just started really researching the space and seeing what kind of work was being created. And it was through that process that I sort of accidentally discovered not just how immersive storytelling could be used to show the lens of somebody else's experience through a headset, but also how it can be used therapeutically as well, and how particularly virtual reality can be used to treat pain or manage anxiety and just love this idea that you can bring together scientists and patients and incredible games designers and make things that are impactful and powerful. And so after working on it for about 7 years, as of March, we just premiered my baby called Soul Paint, which is a co-production between myself and Hatsumi and Monobanda, which are a Dutch kind of games company. So I might just roll the trailer.
Have you where you feel? Everyone has a hidden story. This is a chance to explore yours. An experience that brings together art and science to reveal the infinite and complex worlds of feeling hidden within us all. Soul Paint. Where are you feeling?
Cool. So yeah, Soul Paint is, I guess, not the usual approach to storytelling in XR. I think through the process of learning about the field of VR, one of the first things I tried was Tilt Brush. Has anyone here tried Tilt Brush? A show of hands. So those of you that aren't familiar, then Tilt Brush is a 3D drawing experience that was created by Google yonks ago. And I just loved that you could tell kind of linear stories, but you can also use VR as this creation space where you could paint with fire and electricity and water. And I could honestly spend forever in there. Like, it's such an incredible experience. But it was through this journey of learning more about VR that I came across this incredible arts and health research method called body mapping, where traditionally you would trace around your body on a large piece of paper and imagine, where do I feel anxiety in my body? What does a breakup feel like? What does it feel like holding your niece for the first time? That we embody these feelings and we often struggle to articulate them. And so through kind of visually translating it, traditionally on a piece of paper using, pens or felt tips, whatever you have, that you can reveal this inner world of being able to understand it yourself, but also find new ways of communicating it with other people as well. So I was like, how hard would it be to do this in VR? And over the course of the development process, we've been working with different neuroscientists and behavioral researchers to think about how we could co-create an experience where we really embedded the researchers and the team. And what we've created now is a sort of one-off narrative experience. So you're brought into the world. You have your guide, Rosario, who sort of guides you through the piece. You're onboarded into the different kind of tools that you can use, including your palette. And so we co-created a palette with a range of animated brushes and other tools. You're able to create your artwork and explain what that means to you before you then embody it. You get to wear it and move with it. And as you move, it reacts to your movement before you shake it all off. And at the end of the experience, you get to meet other people that have gone through the experience before you as well. And so I think through that kind of co-creation process, the big piece of feedback that we had from the researchers we worked with is that there's therapeutic value in knowing you're not alone and seeing yourself in the context of others. And so alongside the VR piece, we've created this archive where if people consent to, they can share their drawing. And alongside the piece, we've created an accompanying installation where you can see all those different drawings, particularly of like the people that are in the same space as you. And now we're planning to expand it into education, how it can be used for children and young people to understand their feelings, how they could communicate it to their friends or their parents. But really the heart of this comes from being a patient and being misunderstood and feeling not heard. I think the statistic is on average you have about 11 seconds to convey how you feel before you'll be interrupted by a doctor. And so we're interested in how we can bring this into healthcare, and we've been collaborating with healthcare experts for a long time and doing sort of early pilots as well. And if you showed this to a doctor, could they better understand you? Would you feel better understood? And so that's sort of where we're going next with the project. And ever so briefly as well, another project I've been working on the last few years is Deep. I started out as a curator and a researcher, and really looking at the spectrum of projects that kind of explore mental health and or could be used to improve mental health, and was kind of disappointed by the amount of academics that make things that are founded in a kind of research context but just look a bit naff, and then this whole field of artists that almost accidentally discover things that are therapeutic. And so Deep is not my project, but something I've been involved in as a producer and an ambassador for a long time. And so this is a breath controlled experience where you move through this magical underwater world controlled by diaphragmatic breathing. So we developed a belt that measures your breathing, and we also have created a sort of Tai Chi version where you can sync your breathing to your movement. And we had a behavioural researcher that was embedded in the project and did her entire PhD thesis on this and how it can actually improve long-term anxiety as well. So not just in the moment of playing the game, but actually how do you embody this knowledge? And we're now bringing it into a range of different contexts as well. So we've been taking it to youth detention centres in the US. We've been making an adapted version called Spooky Deep that has a kind of exposure therapy element to it, where you are kind of put in these sort of scarier underwater contexts, and then you get to kind of breathe and move yourself through it. We've also done studies on how it could improve symptoms for people that are suffering from long COVID as well. And there's so many projects like this out there as well. Like, I think there's such an exciting emerging field happening of artists and researchers and patients working together and finding new spaces for experiences that can be on the Quest Store or Steam, but also can be delivered in hospitals or GP centres or care homes as well. So anyway, I've probably done enough talking, so I'll stop there.
Thank you. So next is Way Studio, which is my company that's based in Singapore. It is a storytelling company. We've been making films for many years. And then from there, we started thinking about, like, what about helping people tell their own stories instead of like making short films after short films of like different short stories. So it actually started as a passion project with a set of card games that was just released during Christmas for fun. And then it turned really real and people started enjoying playing it. And we decided to make it into mixed reality, because then we can leverage on the co-location functions of the MR game and also like the embodiment elements of MR. So the types of projects that we create in Way Studio, there are currently two different main ones. So there is the one that I just described, which is a general well-being, like conversation coach type of game. And then the other type of projects are actually for nursing homes, dementia patients specifically. So they are designed to help dementia patients snap out of depressive cycles and learn to connect with one another in the nursing home itself. We don't claim to be in any way like therapy work or health, like, what's that term? Like for healthcare specifically, but it really is for the quality of life for the old folks when they are in the nursing homes. So just a little bit of imagery for what I do. I don't have cool trailers yet for my work because they're not yet shipped. Because in the midst of doing all this, I'm also doing my master's right now at the National Film and Television School. And I can't quite set up a company that's based in the UK yet because I have a student visa. So anyway, this is Greatest Gifts. So that is the card game that was launched in 2022 December. And we've been about 9 months now in developing for MR. We've done like 3 rounds of alpha play tests. So what you see there is actually a room in London that is playing with another room in Singapore. So that floating head on the right, if you can see, this is the view from Singapore. Yeah, so it's just a series. It's a really simple gameplay where people are allowed to choose questions that they want to answer, and then they share with one another, and you can throw gifts at one another, so it sort of like earns you points. Or if you don't like what your friend is saying, you might want to throw a sticky tape at them. And there are also speed round questions, where questions like who is most likely to survive a zombie apocalypse, 3, 2, 1, and you point at whoever is in a party with you. So this is one of the projects that we are currently making, and we are creating in Quest. It's mainly for the Quest 3, and hoping to get into Apple end of this year as well. So the nursing home projects, as I was mentioning, we actually started years ago. We made immersive rooms because MR wasn't really known yet or in use yet. So it was hard for the elderly to put on a headset and play in VR, because myself, like, I get nauseated and it's really hard. But we realized after that MR really works. But before that, mixed reality together, immersive rooms together with Kinect systems to promote the movements of old folks. And we are also we're also using reminiscence therapy in that sense to put in imageries in Singapore, maybe in the olden days, or in different hawker centers and food that they might eat around Singapore, because they are kind of stuck in the nursing homes. So the rooms help them like move out of it a little bit. And it also has soundscapes of how it sounds like in the neighborhood. And yeah, actually, all these games, even till now, are being play tested on a daily basis. We are constantly changing how we engage them, whether in the immersive rooms or in mixed reality. And that's just a little article just on Sunday that we were in Singapore, like one of the Chinese newspapers, that was addressing how it's been really difficult for carers of dementia patients, families especially, to look after their loved ones at home, and are thinking of moving them to nursing homes, but thinking as well, like, how can nursing homes help with them? Because it's quite difficult for an elderly to move into a nursing home feeling like they wake up every day in an alien space, because they may not remember why they're there. So games like this help them engage differently, I would say, with the facilitators or even amongst peers. So that's the immersive rooms. And mixed reality. So this is one of the games that we have made, called Guardians of Trees. So they get to grow trees around the nursing homes, and they need to collaborate with one another to grow the trees, to water the trees, and stop the tree cutters from chopping the trees down. So as you can see, it invites a lot of movement and collaboration, because they would laugh and talk to one another, like, faster, 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 to just beat the tree cutters. So these are what we make in Greatest Gifts. And moving on to Enneagram now.
Getting sucked in too much to your projects. So I'm Kirsty. I'm a managing director with Anagram. We're a creative studio sort of based in London, Bristol, Barcelona, and we sort of specialise in interactive storytelling and immersive experience design. And the company's been together for 10-ish, maybe more than 10 years now. And so the two co-founders were formerly documentary makers and wanted to start creating work that kind of gives audiences more agency, and kind of was really interested in this thing of how you live and experience in your skin, like how that enhances learning and kind of makes the story more relevant to you in kind of actually empathizing. And so we've made like a range of projects that have been things from sort of immersive installations that are around kind of a near future where AI dictates who can and cannot move into countries, two-person VR experiences around kind of power dynamics. And more recently, we've been making virtual reality and mixed reality works under this kind of playing with reality bracket. And so the first one that I'll talk about is Goliath. So this came out in 2021. It's a virtual reality experience, 25 minutes, about a guy called John who was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And it's his experience of the diagnosis, of being in a hospitalized institution for 8 years, of coming out of it and not not sort of being recognized anymore. His brother didn't recognize him. He wasn't sort of talking in the same way. He'd kind of been in this isolated place for a long time. And then he got into gaming, and through the kind of online gaming community, he was able to talk with people without kind of any projections of what his illness is, and kind of making friends that way, and through that becoming confident again. And so it's his story that we're telling. He's a close friend of one of the directors, and so it was really important for us to tell this story well, and tell it through his own voice. And so it's kind of part an understanding of psychosis and part a love letter to gaming. And it's all animated, interactive. Tilda Swinton's the narrator, who she sort of acts as the voice in your head and is guiding you through your own interactions, and how, like, pulling you back into your own way of thinking about things before you go back into his story again. And it did amazingly well. It won the best VR work at Venice. It's been shown at over 45 festivals and venues globally, and was Emmy nominated, not won. And I think because of this, we had a few things that we learned from it that's kind of changing the direction of where we're going. So one was actually the massive benefit it had on John himself. Because of this and developing it with us, he grew his confidence again and actually left this house for the first time in years to meet people. So that was like one of the huge personal successes of it. The other was how it kind of how it went with audiences. So we had all these incredible comments from people online, which we weren't expecting, because online is scary. And people really expressing how it's helped them understand people that they knew with psychosis, people that had PTSD, saying that they could really understand themselves and describe themselves through this work. And for us, that kind of showed us what we knew about this kind of technology and about creating interactive stories well, is that it does resonate with audiences. It has a powerful way of showing something that is normally unseen. And then we had quite a lot of people working in the healthcare sector that came to us, that were just like, this is amazing. This will really help our staff in in empathy and learning more about the kind of diagnosis, because often when you're studying, it's not until much later on that you actually come into contact with patients. And so it's kind of bridging that a bit as well. And so because of the success of this, we're now kind of branching into this Playing with Reality collection, where we're creating other works, which I'll talk about in a second, which is Impulse is the next one. So this is going to be released in a couple of months, in a month. And it is a mixed reality piece, and it's around ADHD. So this time around, we're following 4 characters who have been diagnosed with ADHD, and we have a gender balance in it. A lot to show with how it presents differently in people. So with Goliath, there's a lot of people recognizing the psychosis in other people that they knew, but with this one, there's a lot of kind of self-recognition of own behaviors. And so it's using mixed reality as well as a way of just kind of exploding into your own space and looking at how you kind of process information and your world around you. And again, trying to sort of play with the kind of technology available. So kind of going from this outer space where you're in the real world to coming back into virtual reality, which is more kind of like how you're processing things. And so they're both, I kind of shouldn't find it hard given my job, but I think it's, they're kind of hard to explain in the way that you're talking about quite heavy subjects, but they're also just fun, entertaining documentary pieces that are animated, but using that form to kind of really enhance that story in an embodied way. And so we're kind of doing this Playing with Reality collection. Impulse is the next one. And we're also taking these works into the healthcare sector at the moment in a piece called Inside Mental Health. So kind of repackaging them as training tools with kind of extra curriculum around it, as well. So that's kind of the 2 directions that we're going in, with everything. I think we're going to show the trailer for Goliath, because the other one is not ready yet.
Can you tell the difference between what is and isn't real? When the one thing that links you to the outside world disappears, where does that leave you?
Schizophrenia is not a proven illness. It's something that I understand. That you can't tell it's real what's real. I do recognize the difference between myself and people.
Everything you see is just part of the game.
A distortion.
Everything you feel is real.
I love that trailer.
Thanks. Hopefully the next one will be good as well. We're making it at the moment, and I don't know what's going on. So the next thing, because we're in the design track, we were talking about what kind of things would be useful to know. And when we were prepping before and sort of talking through, one of the things that we often go through is kind of like how our approach generally to making work, and what things we consider. And I think there's probably quite a lot in there that informs the kind of I guess the kind of empathy tools within it. And I guess this is for us how we approach work generally. So it's not actually just kind of within VR, it's kind of just our approach to storytelling. And so there's kind of three things that we tend to consider. So one is where and when. So like context is really important. Where are people going to experience this? When? How do people come into the experience? How do they come out of it? And then what do I do? So like in immersive, the body is a tool. It's like one of the things that you're one part of the language of it. So what is it that you're asking people to do? How does that inform the story? How does that enhance kind of the experience? And then what do I touch? So looking at the kind of symbolism of objects. So with XR, everything that you're looking at and doing feeds to the experience and feeds into how you're learning and moving things on. So really carefully designing any moments of interaction or touch or especially with mixed reality, things that are around your room and how that's then kind of reinforcing what it is that you're trying to do. And so for all of these three things, we kind of consider them, and they all kind of form kind of in they all kind of come into this question about like what is it really about. So we're always trying when we make work for the audience to live a particular question, and so all of these things are kind of preoccupations for that one thing. Is like, what is the question that you want people to ask of themselves? And that is kind of the way for us of like really understanding how to use the tools in different ways to tell that story and to make it something that is empathetic, I suppose, in nature. So that's kind of our approach. And I think there's probably quite a lot in that is other ways. And I think particularly we were talking around the kind of context about where things are and how people experience it.
Definitely, because I feel like particularly with like virtual reality experiences, there are things that can be accessed at home, but I think we still are dealing with like the challenges of distribution. And I think one of the things that I love and hate the most about it is that it's about how you build the whole experience around it as well. That we did a lot of our user testing in libraries, and I'm really interested in the role that libraries can play in distributing VR, particularly things that are around well-being and how we can make them more accessible to the public as a form of preventative care and educating people. But it's I think within that design process, there's all the things you have to consider within the experience and how you onboard people. And library testing was amazing for that, because I think when you're in the game design world for a while as well, you start to there's so much assumed knowledge, but showing 95-year-old Ethel in Maidenhead Library how to put on a headset is a totally different experience. And so I think as part of that process, I'm sure you're all extremely familiar with it well by now, but that kind of constant testing, audience testing, how are people going to use it, what are the things that people get stuck on, because at the beginning I was like, it's a no-brainer, they'll know to pick that thing up and look over there, but there's so much directing and hand holding that needs to be done. But also thinking about the situation that it's done, particularly with us with Soul Paint as well, there is a part of the piece where you're invited to explain what you've drawn, and what that means to you, and it's a really personal experience. And people can draw things that are quite like simple and like, oh, I'm in quite a good mood today, but some people want to talk about things that are really personal. And so it's also about how you facilitate an experience around that. And what we worked really hard on was creating an installation where even if you're in the middle of like a really busy festival, like South by is just like this huge ballroom with like 40 experiences, and it's like mayhem, and it's like, how do you create an intimate private experience within that? And so a huge part of the process was also working with our installation creators from here in Brighton, Creative Giants, amazing people to work with, but really around that process. How do you onboard people? Where do they sit? Who's the first person they meet? How do you explain the experience and get them to feel safe, and kind of design that space around it, as well as how you care for people afterwards, like things like Goliath as well. Like it's such an amazing story that I think like so many people have been affected by. It's like, how do you facilitate that conversation afterwards as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think all of that is stuff that we try and really consider. And I think knowing like if someone's not going to be doing it in a venue, like people are like primarily you're trying to sell it on the store or depending on which element for that one we wear. And so that for us, that's where the kind of the role of Tilda and the narration piece is really key in taking people through that experience, where you can't be there physically to onboard and offboard people. Like, how are you carefully designing that space so that even within the kind of virtual world, you've got safe space or you've got something where you can come back to this central part. And that's kind of where the sort of Tilda voice is. And similarly for Impulse, we try and have that kind of anchor that is separate to the story that is pulling you through it and guiding you through it, so that it's kind of not just sort of throwing you into this kind of bewilderment.
Yeah, I think we're kind of going a little bit also into the lessons learned part of our conversation. For us, like with the design process, the where and when is a very interesting question to ask, because I think for most games that are being made, they're usually made for PCs or like mobiles or consoles. But I think in the XR world, you really have to think, like Sarah mentioned, the onboarding part and offboarding is really important, because you need to think, where are these headsets that are going to go, and who are the ones that are going to put them on? What will the experience of a 8-year-old versus an 80-year-old be like? And all those things needs to be taken into consideration. Yeah, I think when we did our thing at London Games Festival with Greatest Gift, I was very surprised when there was like a 21-year-old guy who put on the headset, and because there is a gift on the floor that he was supposed to pick up, he started doing this. And when I try to ask him what do you want to do, he said, I'm trying to pick up the gift, and so he kept doing this. And so it looked like a touchscreen iPad or phone where you just like pull and throw, and it's walk physically there, squat down, pick it up with two hands, and throw. Yeah, so it's not intuitive actually, as much as we think it might be intuitive because it's embodied, but it actually isn't. So the design process needs a lot of thinking because people are not used to the tech yet and all those things. Yeah.
There's also ways to play with it. I think with Goliath, I guess the central question for us was, how do you know what is and isn't real? And so that was kind of the way of us building kind of empathy around psychosis, is actually saying it's so easy to slip between these states of familiarity and knowing, what is and what isn't real. And so you're in this kind of virtual space where you're able to kind of play with the sound and play with the kind of visuals that momentarily makes you kind of question where you are or what is happening. And so not trying to do it in a way that it becomes gimmicky or that it's kind of making light of it, but just those kind of elements that you can build into the story design that actually kind of echo that point and make you momentarily realize how easy it is to slip between those states.
Yeah, I love the power of Goliath of doing that. Yeah, just to share an anecdote, because I did a playtest with a friend, she mentioned after the playtest, she was really quiet throughout. And then I thought I wanted to give her some space. And then when she was ready to share, she started telling me that she has a brother who suffers from psychosis, and the whole family doesn't understand it. And for 17 years, he has been very estranged from the rest of the family. And after going through that experience, she said her words were, it suddenly dawned upon me why he can only retreat into games that they never understood. They always thought he didn't want to connect with them and finding excuses to move away from the family. But actually that's because she said playing games in Goliath made her feel it was the only grounding thing about the entire experience. And so it started making her really think. And yeah, she said she was hoping that she could start talking to her brother again. So it's really powerful. Yeah.
Amazing. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, it's really amazing to hear that. I think that's kind of what you want from it. And it's not trying to, I guess, suppose like the kind of conversation around empathy through XR and any of these things, or it's not trying to, shove it down your throat. It's finding ways of using that form to do that. And similarly, like we were saying before, you can obviously have a really engaging film or music or anything. It's like how you're using that kind of form to tell that story or to do that. And so I think what XR does do well, and we found it it's interesting going from VR to mixed reality, but with VR particularly, and I think it's partly why there's more interest in what the healthcare professionals are telling us as well, is this thing where you're kind of shut out from seeing anything else. Like your attention is there and it's your kind of full body attention that is in that moment. And I think for us in a way, it's kind of like active listening. Like you're finding a way of doing that is engaging and kind of keeping people there.
Yeah. And I also think that VR is such an amazing metaphor for psychosis as well. So I have experience of psychosis as well. It's about 10 years ago now, and I think only I'm beyond it now. Anyway, but I initially became really interested in VR because I wanted to make a piece about psychosis. And then when I heard of Goliath being made, I was like, oh my God, amazing, someone's done it. But that was kind of my road in, because I think I found VR such an kind of fascinating metaphor for the experience, because you just don't know, or I did not know what was real and what wasn't. And I was just like, well, this is how I thought about reality before this thing started happening. But now everything I'm seeing and believing is like totally different. And it's like, how do you match those two things over? Was like really scary. And I think it kind of, there's a parallel between that and just putting on a headset that you still, you know, that there's like the room around you, you know, that you can like feel the chair beneath you, you know, that like this is how like physics usually works. But then suddenly like everything you're seeing and believing is so different, and that you are kind of in those two places at once. And I think that's why Goliath works so well, is that it also acknowledges that you are in this kind of liminal space where it's like you can, there's a bit where Tilda says that, you know, feel the controllers in your hand, and that, but you're also here as well. And I just think it was so sensitively done. So yeah, as someone with experience, I just, yeah, I would applause to you for making such a powerful thing. And when it's so hard to talk to people about these things, like I think we're in a really interesting era now where like we are talking about mental health much more, but it's still like the things that are quite common, like depression and anxiety. And I think we're all more comfortable in saying like, I'm feeling a bit anxious today, and people know how to respond to it. But I think things like psychosis, there's a lot of fear around it. And you know, we all know how huge the games industry is, and like what an amazing tool it is for introducing concepts that are complex and hard to talk about. And the role that projects like this, or Hellblade as well, is like another amazing example of like normalizing conversations around psychosis. And that is also starting to change the way that such a huge proportion of society understand these things, and that people feel more empowered to have a conversation with someone with lived experience, instead of being like, oh, you're this scary person that I can't engage with. But
I think that thing of engaging, or like showing the unseen, and that's sort of obviously what you're doing as well with your work, where it's like a lot of this thing around breaking stigma is just, it is empathy, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do, is break stigma with these works. And I think that is kind of having a moment of explaining the things that are really hard to explain in different ways. And so is that sort of, I know one of the questions that I think we're sort of getting to or answering, which I kind of always hate if I'm honest, but it's like, why XR? I do really hate this question, because I think it's just like, yeah, why anything really? But I suppose why XR for empathy is kind of an interesting thing, because I don't know how much you actively talk about other forms of art in the same way as empathy. Obviously, you had the kind of film as the empathy machine for ages, but what for you was the kind of reason for XR?
I think for me, it's about giving people agency. That you're not being passive in the same way, but also it's a fully embodied experience, that it's not a screen over there and that you can kind of be disassociated from it, but you are actively engaging in that story. Like I really see virtual reality and various other realities as well as like this body medium, and how through interacting with a piece in this embodied way, that it completely transforms how you take in that information and embody it. Like that's why I love so much working on Deep, that that you're not just kind of moving through this world and like breathing along, but it is your breath that is powering you through this kind of beautiful landscape. And the studies we did found that if you did a 7-minute session twice over 2 weeks, then your ability to self-regulate your emotions long term is much better. And so there is something about being in that world, like embodying that skill or that learning, and that you do remember it as a real memory. which brings up so many ethical questions as well around this as well, because like, yeah, if it wasn't done as sensitively, or I mean, I've tried all sorts of experiences in VR that are like pretty full on. There was a piece tried a few years ago called the Doom Room. It was over at the Old Market in Brighton, where there's a moment where I got like shot in the head with a rifle, and like, and I remember that like really well. And I think there's a lot of like responsibility with that it's like, this is such a powerful medium that we can, yeah, improve people's or reduce people's experience of pain, or yeah, we can change the way that people see themselves and perceive themselves, but also like what are the kind of ethical challenges around that is something in my other role where I work a lot in like the policy around VR and mental health particularly, of like how, like, do we need to regulate these things, and like, is it only regulated if it's in the healthcare industry, or do we need to start like regulating games in a different way, or is it just about, you know, giving them the right markings as well? But if it is changing how we see ourselves and each other, like what is the kind of potential challenges of that as well?
I just want to quickly answer this question as well, and we're running out of time. Hopefully, there's time for a bit of Q&A. Yeah. So for me, like creating an XR in the nursing homes, it's a very obvious choice because it's very hard to bring the elderly out anyway, and they can't experience the things that we are putting them in if they stay in the nursing home. So that's one. And the other thing, like for Creators Gift as well, I noticed that when you put a headset on the person, I was just having this chat with you just now, Kirsty, that it still has that magical like wonderment feeling when somebody is still new to VR, MR, XR in any way, where you put it on and there's like, whoa, wow, I can do this, like, and that actually brings out an openness in people. So like the conversation game works as well in that sense, because people start to feel a bit more like, oh, they are playing and they're trying and they get to have lighthearted conversations. Yeah.
Agreed.
Should we, I don't know, like, I think we sort of covered a little bit about the challenges that are ahead of us. Do you want to say anything more about that, or should we open up for questions?
Can I open up for questions, and then any other specific things maybe?
Any questions?
Yes, we have a mic.
Microphone.
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
Oof, I can finally see the people.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. That was really good. I just had a follow-up question about the ethics and the sensitivity of dealing with a topic such as psychosis. What kind of systems did you have in place to handle that with sensitivity, especially if potentially the people creating, say, like the script aren't necessarily directly experienced with that, or were they? Or did you have to send it to like external references for like approval? How did you deal with that?
We had, for all of the projects we make, we have kind of expert advisors that are kind of specialists in that area to sort of work with us on that. And whenever we were working directly with John, like we had a really big kind of duty of care around him. And so always made sure that we had sort of somebody else present whenever we were having meetings with him, and brought him into the process to kind of show him different versions of it as well. And we worked really carefully kind of from the early development of it through to launch and through to still now when we're showing it in places. And then around kind of, we had different workshops with different people with lived experience. So we kind of did initial workshops with those people and brought them into testing of it as well. And we also worked around the kind of language that's used with it as well. So we were really careful in sort of how we were trying to talk about it and what we would and wouldn't say. So for example, we only ever really say psychosis or diagnosed with schizophrenia, because it's still quite a challenging thing to say someone has schizophrenia. And so there's quite a lot of kind of learning for us about kind of sensitivities around it and how we understand it too. So we definitely engage people in those kind of conversations to make sure that we're on track and to bring them into the testing and script as well.
Questions?
Hi, thank you all. That was really, really nice to hear something talking about feelings. I just had a question about the difference between VR and mixed reality, and whether that in terms of the engaging with the public, whether you've noticed a difference in the ease of that, or the way that people engage more actively, any barriers to the VR headset, those sort of things.
I think both VR and MR, like you have to put on the headset, so they're still chunky and heavy and not the most comfortable. But when it comes to motion sickness, I think it's a lot easier with MR. Yeah, and so it's people stay, even the elderly, like they stay a lot longer in MR than VR. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Have you done any testing also with just like a tablet, as a like an AR? Sorry, with a tablet?
Oh no, just with the headsets.
Yeah.
We've not done any with AR. Yeah, I think our time is up, right? Okay.
No.
Very quick
Sorry,
kind of
that's fine.
questions. Yeah, we'll be around at the end though.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'd love to chat if anyone has any further questions. But
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.